Hello and welcome to Sumo Cooks. Today I'm going to show you how to make bread. To start, I'm going to pour about 2 cups of warm water into a mixing bowl, and I'll add to that a teaspoon of sugar and 1 package of dry instant yeast. I'm going to give this a good stir, and I'll let this sit at room temperature for about 10 to 15 minutes until I can see a sponge forming. This shows us that our yeast is active and alive. To this, I will add 3 cups of bread flour. And I have the dough hook attachment on my stand mixer. You don't need to use a stand mixer. I just find it's easier. And I also threw in about a teaspoon of salt. Now I'm going to combine this just until it comes together. I do not want to overmix this. And I'm going to add another 2 cups of bread flour at this point. I'm going to let this go until the flour has just combined. I'll pull off that dough hook and I'll take away any excess dough that's on there. You can see the texture of my dough. It's very sticky and stringy, and that's what we're looking for. We're going to coat our bowl and the dough with some olive oil to make sure it doesn't stick. And we're going to cover this with some cling wrap and let this sit in a draft-free place like your oven or your microwave for about 2 hours or until it's doubled in size. I live at 5,000 feet, so mine takes much less time. You need to be very careful about your altitude because that does affect the rising time. Once it's done, I'm going to turn my dough out onto a well-floured surface, and I'll divide it up. So I decided I wanted to make 1 smaller loaf and 1 larger loaf. So I took about a third of it, and that's what I'm going to work with first. I'm very gently patting it out. I don't want to force the air out, but we will need to knock some of it out of there. So once it's reached about the thickness that I want, I'm going to fold it over very gently once again, and I'm going to just stretch it out and mold this to the shape that I want my loaf to be. And once again, you have to work with this pretty gently because you don't want to force that air out. So that's the loaf. That's the size that I went for. And I'm going to put this on a well cornmealed silpat or a silicone baking mat. And with our next loaf, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to gently pat it out, gently, and then I'll fold it over. Be sure to use a little more flour than I did because as you can see, I'm having some trouble here. So once again, patting it out, then we're going to fold it over to form a nice loaf. And the seam side, well, all the seams will be at the bottom, and that's what we want. We want a nice smooth top. So I've got that done. I'm going to just pat it out a little more until I get the shape that I want. And now I'm going to take a towel, a clean kitchen towel, to which I'll generously apply some cornmeal. Spread that out very generously, and then we're going to place our dough seam side down. And then we're going to dust the top of it once again very generously with some more cornmeal. We're going to kind of fold the dough in the towel, leaving lots of room for it to rise and expand. We don't want this to be tight. And we're going to let this sit on the counter at room temp until it's doubled in size. While this is happening, our oven is preheating. So the oven I've got preheated here at about 500 degrees. I've also got a pan of water to create steam, and I've got my cast iron Dutch oven in there getting really nice and hot. So once it's ready, I'm going to very gently invert my dough, my large loaf, into the cast iron Dutch oven. I'll put that lid on and this will go right back in the oven. So that creates a nice steam effect. And then the second loaf, I didn't have any fancy contraption for that, so I just stuck it in there. And the smaller loaf took about half an hour to get to this point right here. I'm going to let this cool for about 10 to 15 minutes because if we cut into it now, it'll have a very dense, soggy center. So our larger loaf, about half an hour into it, I took off the lid. And now we're going to let this cook uncovered for about another 15 to 20 minutes until you get your desired crust. The whole point of cooking this covered for the first half an hour and now uncovering it is to achieve that artisan crust that you see in a lot of bakeries and fancy breads. And this beautiful crust is the result of that steam that we've created in our oven. You can see the inside of the bread looks very, very nice and airy, and those bubbles tell you that it's risen well. And our second loaf here has come out and it looks so beautiful. And take a little more precaution than I did while flipping this over. Maybe have someone help you. But you can hear how well it's cooked and the crust is formed so beautifully.
Nice crusty bread.
So there you have it, your beautiful homemade artisan loaves. Please try this out and let us know what you think, and thanks for watching.